Welcome to the Legacy Project. My name is Cody Nesper. Thank you so much for joining in. Today we're going to be talking about how to get a green card in a couple of weeks as opposed to months or years, which is really exciting and helped my partner and I to be able to come from Australia back to the United States much faster than we were expecting. And it was an incredible time, an incredible journey, but we had very little help in the process. So I'm hoping that this video goes out to help so many people who are trying to get back onto US soil and maybe even just enlighten some of the journey for people who aren't sure how it works. Now, to save you any heartache when it comes to clickbait, if you're not interested in the process or you're not interested in a spousal visa or adopting, this video will not shave off time for your green card application. Now, this may be applicable to you, something that you could potentially reach out to or find other resources, but at this point, this video is really strictly for new adoptions from foreign countries and for people that are spouses who are living overseas but U.S. residents or citizens. The typical green card process is a mail-in process that goes for at least 14 months and can take up to 27 months. And that's for a U.S. citizen whose partner is living abroad. To me, that is absolutely bonkers. I cannot believe that that is how long it's going to take to be able to reunite two spouses who live in different countries. I mean, they're already going through so much heartache and difficulty being apart that to take that type of time is astounding to me. So I was really hoping to find something that would work faster, and luckily we did. So I'm really hoping that this works to provide some clarity and some information for people who are hoping to find a way to expedite the process. This process for us only took about 5 weeks, and it was actually in the midst of the pandemic, and it was done at the Sydney consulate. And luckily, this process is really streamlined, and everybody that we spoke with knew what was going on, and it really made a big difference for us in order to move back from Australia to America and to move on forward into what we thought we had coming next. Now, this process was actually available and a standard option at most consulates in 2019. But in 2019, during a particular administration, they changed this policy. And when this changed, it went from being known as direct consular filing to something that you would only qualify for in exceptional circumstances. Now, these qualifications are quite stringent and difficult to be in, but as long as you find yourself in these exceptional circumstances, the process is actually quite simple and streamlined. In terms of requirements necessary for direct consular filing, I'm actually going to leave a link below in the description. When you go there, it's just for the Australian consulate, but I'm sure it applies broadly as well. The reason I want to do that is because it's all legal jargon specifically dedicated to all of the scenarios that qualify. And so I want you to know and have available to you all of those different options. If you have any questions about how to interpret it or how it worked for us or anything like that, you can always leave a comment or try and reach out to me on Instagram. And so we lucked out. I had been living in Australia for 6 years, student visas, working visas, and then finally became a permanent resident holder in Australia after my wife and I got married. And that was a whole journey in and of itself. But when we went to apply for her green card so we could move back to the United States, the only process that we had heard of was actually to do it long form. So essentially you would fill out all of this paperwork by hand or use legal counsel or whatever it would take, and then you would mail it back to either Chicago or Texas or LA depending on the processing center. And we did that, and we spent lots of money making it happen. And you know exactly where this story is going. It got lost in the mail. Now it was 3 months after we filled everything out. We lost it all. It was so frustrating. We felt so stuck, and we didn't know exactly how we were going to be able to move forward. And so we kept dreaming and fighting and scheming, and we thought, okay, well, we work at an international organization, maybe they'll be willing to transfer my wife. So we pursued a working visa that could, lead to a green card. And that was all kinds of chaos and money spent, but eventually it turned out for nothing, which is okay, because it ended up being that we felt so desperate that I came across this direct consular filing process. And in it, we found whole lots of hope and a whole lot of options to be able to make this process expedited. So this is what we did. I hope that it helps you. I hope that it speeds up the process for you. I hope that you're reunited with your loved ones, or whatever it is that you're pursuing. But this would be, to my knowledge, this would be available for green card holders and citizens alike, and this is the same process that happens when people adopt in international waters. So hopefully this helps alleviate some stress and some pressure. I just walked this through with some good friends of mine as well, and it looks like they're returning to the US very soon. So it's really simple. There's actually only 8 steps in this entire process. It's not something that is simpler than filing paper, but it is extremely streamlined from this point forward. So step one is to fill out your I-130, in my case I-130A application, which is essentially just the form for the U.S. Immigration Office for resident or a citizen to sponsor a foreign resident. And so this could be for children, this could be for your partner, this could be for any arrangement of family matters. So my wife is Australian, I'm American, our daughters have 2 passports, so they have Australian and US passports. And so on my I-130, I was only sponsoring my wife, because my kids don't need visas as the US citizens. Step 2 is really easy. All you're actually doing is sending all these documents to your immigration visa email at your local consulate. And so the consulate is going to process all of that paperwork, so you need to send the I-130, I-130A if you need it, and any supplementary documents that you might need. So that could be passports, birth certificates, photographs, it could be immigration letters showing your proof of residency in that foreign country, and going forward from there. Step 3 is for you as the sponsor. So I was the sponsor as the US citizen in my application with my wife. And so when we did this, I actually went to the consulate after having sent all these documents. They send me an appointment to come to the consulate and to basically submit them in paper. So this is when all of those wet ink signatures need to be done and all of the supplemental evidence that comes in. This is where if you had any additional, again, photographs or travel documents to prove your relationship status, that's where you would want to bring this in as well and present it to the consulate. They're very wonderful and helpful, and normally when you've got at least a longer history of relationship like we did, we had 2 kids and married a few years, it was very simple. They actually didn't even want to see our supplementary documentation. But if you're a newly married person or new to the country or anything like that, they may want to understand exactly what's going on here and ask for some more evidence. So I think the more that we can have when we walk into that consulate, the more prepared we will be for any types of questions. Step 4 is really just a waiting game. Thankfully for us, it was the same day waiting game. So I went in for my interview, just like in step 3, and when I finished for the consulate, they gave me a piece of paper and said, hey, wait for an email from us letting you know our decision whether we approve or disapprove your ability to sponsor this foreign resident. And when I got home, I actually already had the email waiting for me on my phone, which was really exciting. And when you get that approval, you get a link and some details on how to fill out Form DS-260. DS-260 is really a longer version of your I-130 application in digital. And so you're going to provide all of that evidence and scans of those evidence and filling out minutes and minutes of paperwork digitally, and then you submit it, and essentially that's going to go for investigation and approval to make sure you're you and your spouse is who they are, or your child is who they are, and essentially they run a background check to make sure that no funny business is going on. It's actually a wonderful piece of legislation to protect people from literally kidnapping people from other countries. So really thankful that exists, and so that process is done, I believe, through the National Visa Center, but it basically happens remotely, and then they communicate with the consulate from there. Step 5. While you're waiting for an interview to be scheduled for your spouse, for the person that's being sponsored, you want to make sure to get all of your paperwork ready to go. So you want to make sure that when they get approval for their interview, you have everything lined up so that your partner can just walk in, put a bunch of paper down at the consulate, sit and wait, and essentially to answer a couple of questions during their interview. So the first thing you need to have ready is you need to have ready your I-864. This is a form that is specifically dedicated to support, so showing that you can offer that financial support to the person that you're sponsoring. Now, this is tricky. I was making money in Australia. It was pretty good money. We had lots of savings. However, all of it was Australian. We didn't necessarily have a provable income at that point yet in America. We did have a job offer, which was great, but they needed that evidence of income, and that evidence would come in forms of bank accounts, pay stubs, and the like. And so if you're not making US money, you are going to need a sponsor at this point. There is one caveat. If you've got a chunk of change that's all cash, you can prove that you have the cash to support this person. But the affidavit of support, or I-864, exists to show that you guys are going to be able to live above the poverty line. And so that includes your entire household size. For us, it was 4 people. So in order to do that in cash, you have to show that you have, I think it's 150% of the cash that you would need to support a family of however your family size is for at least a year. The sponsorship, the financial sponsorship, can be anybody. Doesn't have to be related, doesn't have to be anybody, but it has to be somebody who's making enough money. And as a co-sponsor, so I apologize, let me clarify this. The sponsor, so I'm the sponsor for my wife, I'm not making money, I still have to fill out an affidavit of support. Then I got a joint sponsor, and this person made more money than the poverty level for our family size, and they signed off on saying, yes, I'll make sure to provide for Cody and his family if they ever needed help. And they have to sign off saying, okay, if these people ever needed federal public support, that person would be responsible for paying those back. Now, that's not tax credits or incentives or anything like that. It's essentially if somebody was literally on full federal support for rental assistance, for food, for whatever type of social programs that exist that they would need to access, the sponsors would be accountable for paying back to the government. 2 big things here with the I-864. First being, I was living in Australia at the time. Technically, I thought my domicile was Australia. I was wrong. Thankfully, I caught this on the internet before I submitted my paperwork. But whenever you submit an I-864, your sponsor and your joint sponsor both have to have domicile in the United States. Now, domicile is specifically a term dedicated to saying where you reside, where your legal residence is going to be. Now, I wasn't fibbing here. There's actually the ability to indicate that you are in good faith intending to change your domicile as a U.S. citizen who's immigrating back to the United States. And so I indicated that my domicile was Phoenix, Arizona, and then at the end of the form I just indicated that I am in good faith returning to the United States, and as soon as my partner has permanent residence, we'll all be going together and my domicile will permanently be the United States again. The second thing that's huge and critical to remember here is that we have to be current on taxes. Now, for the I-864, they're going to ask for evidence of our tax income. And so it can ask for at least 3 years of tax income and tax reporting. So if you've been an expat living overseas and you haven't been filing your taxes, this process will hang you up. No matter if you're moving back to the United States with or without your partner, you will need to catch up on filing taxes. True story. United States is one of only, I believe, 2 countries in the entire world that still ask their citizens to report income even when they don't reside in the country anymore. And if you make over a certain amount of income, you even have to pay on those. That can be a little bit pricey, so make sure that if you're living overseas, you're filing your taxes. You may not owe anything, but you definitely need to report. And it's a lot cheaper to do it year by year than it is to catch up. I know from experience. Step 6. Now, this is a really important step, and it's something that we can't always control. But if you can try and get your spouse's visa health appointment scheduled as early as possible in the process, like as soon as the consulate approves your ability to move through direct consular filing, it'll be critical for you to try and schedule that health examination as soon as possible. The reason for that is that that health examination is necessary in order to implement that visa for your sponsor or sponsee. So if you don't have that done, there's going to be a holdup on that process. And it can be a couple weeks, could be months, could be however long, but if you can have it done early, that's good. Now, caveat here, the health examination is the date from which the 6 months of their entrance visa to the United States is valid. So what happens at the end of this process is they get a visa that's essentially glued into their passport, and that is an entrance visa to the United States. It technically acts as a green card, but it is not physically their green card. They will have legal entrance into the United States until their green card arrives, and then that paper visa is no longer valid. And so if you for some reason you're not sure when you're going to move, you would want to make this health examination the last thing you do. But if you're trying to move as soon as you possibly can, get that done as soon as you have approval to move through direct consulate filing. Step 7. This is for the sponsee. So this is when they're going to be taking their paperwork and I-864s and all of the evidence of your entire relationship, everything you've been working towards this whole time, and they're going to take it into the consulate and they're going to present it to somebody who's working at the consulate there. Typically it can be a consulate general or somebody who does immigration interviews, but it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. I know for us, the consulate, you don't even get to do face-to-face stuff. It's, between bulletproof glass, and you're kind of hearing the machine, the ones and zeros of their voice coming through a speaker, and it can be real nerve-wracking, and I kind of got the shakes every time I was going through it. But if you're prepared, it should be real simple. They'll ask you a couple of questions about your relationship, just ask you why you're hoping to move to the United States, and make sure that everything seems above board. And then after that's done, they should let the sponsee know at that time, specifically if they're approved or denied. The sponsee will pay all of the fees that they need to pay from that point forward. So that could be visa fee, reciprocity fee, anything that's necessary at that point for that specific country's immigration process. And then they're actually dismissed, but they leave their passport. So you're going to leave your passport with the consulate, because while you're away, they're going to put that paper passport or paper visa into your passport, which is pretty cool. Step 8. This is the last step. This is the final one. You've received your passport. It's come back from the consulate. They mailed it to you and you've received it. And in our house, it was shouts of joy that we knew we were going to be able to go. And it was an incredible miracle for us. Really, really excited. And so when you've got that passport, you can literally leave immediately. It's just a matter of what flights are available to you. As soon as your sponsee has that passport, that visa's there, you're good to go. The only thing I would check is just to make sure all the names are right, they all appear the correct way, birth dates, everything seems in order, because from that point forward you're going to get on a flight, fly to the U.S., go through U.S. immigration when you land on their soil, and for us, it was literally faster for my wife to go through immigration with a green card than it was for her to go on an ESTA, which is a visa waiver program. So they asked her like one question and then just opened up the file and started hammering away on the keyboard, putting in the paperwork. So all the best for you guys on your journey. I hope this helped you in your process. I hope this helped give you some hope and maybe some way of fast-tracking your visa and immigration process. Let us know if you have any questions or concerns in the comments. Feel free to tag me, comment. I'll answer as many questions as I possibly can. Below in the description are links to a couple of helpful websites and organizations that I've used in order to try and understand this process. And all the best. Bless you. Thanks.